So when I was new to 3M, I came to the company, met with my boss, and asked him what his expectations for me were. And he said, my expectations are that you'll create a $100 million a year business. And I looked at him and I said, how do I do that? And so he responded with nothing. And I at that point, looked forward to a career of annual performance reviews saying did not meet expectations. But it left with me this idea of how do you create a large new opportunity? How do you successfully create new businesses? Good. A lot of this comes to the question of how do we think of innovation? Is innovation more like rolling dice, or is it more of a chess game? Is it something that's more towards pure luck or towards pure skill? What do you think? What is your experience? What have you learned in reading about this? This is a very important question because if it's towards pure luck, it says what you should do is don't invest a lot of your time and money, try lots of things because it's luck. Most will fail, some will succeed, so you want a lot of opportunities to try it. If on the other hand it's skill, it's something you want to learn, practice, and develop expertise towards because that'll pay off, increasing your probability of success. Now, interestingly, when you read the literature, most of it goes towards pure luck. Unfortunately, there's a lot of research in this area, and actually that does show it's the case. If we look at the spectrum of luck to skill, and we look at the probability of success of a new innovator successfully starting a new business, it's about 20%. If they have a prior success, it goes up to 30%. And if they're working on a breakthrough, something that will profoundly change technology in the industry, it's about 10%. Now, this is a little bit daunting. So it says, okay, what you should do if you want to create new businesses is create a lot of them, and few of them will turn out. If you want to create a $100 million a year business, which is a breakthrough most likely, you'll be lucky to have one of those in your career. And you almost certainly won't have two. So a little frustrating looking at this. Well, fortunately, I was in 3M. 3M has a very unique culture. And that's very flat. You can call anybody on the phone, ask for help, and just due to the culture of the company, they will feel a responsibility to help you. And I worked with that, and over the first 8 years of my career, I worked with over 100 different groups, helping them helping me with my projects. And each group I worked with, I looked at what they were doing, how they were doing it, and if I was managing that group, what would I do differently or the same? They call it modeling or training. And the goal was to look at the elements of these different teams that shifted the success to the right. So fortunately, there's a lot of research on the impact of skill on innovation. Abby Griffin and her co-workers out of the University of Utah have extensively researched this. And they found that there was a small number of innovators that had a very high probability of success, very high success rate. Not a very large group, as she was measuring about 0.2% of the population of a typical company. Their impact is enormous. She measured about 125-to-1 economic impact of these serial innovators relative to an average employee. But what this means is it's not luck, it can be a skill. These serial innovators have turned it into a skill. So in the process of working with these 100 different groups, we looked at what were the factors that most determined the success rate of the groups in creating their innovation. And what we found is there were 4. The first one might seem the most obvious. However, I guarantee if you read books on the importance of ideas and innovation, most will say ideas are a dime a dozen, ideas don't matter, it's all about execution. What we found, on the other hand, in our work is ideas are extremely important. Quite frankly, there are some ideas that are just bad and they're not worth pursuing. Also, ideas that are good can be one of two ilks. They can either be ideas that you execute and they don't really lead anywhere else. Excellent ideas on their own, but they kind of create a ending point. On the other hand, there are other ideas that lead to dozens of opportunities. So clearly ideas matter. They're good or they're bad. They're incremental or sustaining innovations, or they're breakthrough innovations that lead to many possibilities. And it's very important to know what kind of idea you're working with. Second is the process. One of the things that we learn in reading about innovation is there's dozens of processes for innovation. I invite you to think of these as they're all good, but usually, although they are touted as one process fits all, it's usually the case that each process is designed for a very specific situation. And so we should look at these processes and say, what type of idea is this appropriate for? What kind of business is this appropriate for? And the goal for the innovator is to learn different tools for these different situations. As an example, a process for managing a breakthrough is very different than managing a sustaining innovation. And managing a breakthrough as a sustaining innovation will turn it into a sustaining innovation. It will destroy the breakthrough. Third, as people. We'll get a little bit into this more. A lot of books, a lot of discussion on innovation tends to be people agnostic. We found there's certain characteristics that you desperately need to incorporate in your team, especially at the early stages of developing an innovation. And fourth, we have probably the most important part, which is the culture of the organization. Now, interestingly, if you're part of a small company, you may say, well, can I really influence that? Or especially if I'm part of a big company, the culture is already set. Well, every time you form a team, you have an opportunity of creating either the culture or the microculture. And understanding what kind of cultures create and lead to sustaining innovation successfully, develop breakthroughs successfully, is terribly important. So what we found is these four things were the most common elements of determining whether innovation was going to be successful or not. And as a manager of a group, understanding these four things is the most critical part to turning innovation from luck to a skill. So I'd like to start with the idea phase of the program. A common way of generating ideas is to go through a brainstorming process. Post-it notes, put lots of ideas, and then typically we'll rank them by probability of success and business impact. We'll apply tools such as, is it real? Is it something we can win at? Is it worth doing? Problem we found with this type of approach works very well for sustaining innovation. What we found is almost no breakthrough innovations will pass this filter. Think about it. Is it real? Can we win at it? Is it worth doing? It's a question for an existing business or something that's just a small change. If you put a breakthrough innovation through that filter, it will almost certainly fail. So as we're looking at different types of innovations, we need to look at the goal and say, what's the right tool for filtering this through? I have a colleague here, Rob Kishka, and he's spent most of his career developing tools for assessing different types of ideas. And one of his favorite approaches is using the only statement. The only statement is, what do we know that others don't? Why us, why now? And his only statement can come in a number of different flavors. It can be a new connection that people haven't seen. It can be a new insight or discovery, or a capability that we have that's perhaps unique but underexplored. Critically important to have an only statement. If we've never seen a situation where an organization was able to develop a breakthrough that didn't have an only statement. We also manage it in a different way. As I mentioned, breakthroughs almost never show up well in these type of brainstorming assessments. And so the approach that's used for platforms or breakthroughs is to not think of them as a single idea, but think of them as a series of related ideas. Think of any breakthrough. Was there only one product that came as a result of that? When the transistor was first invented, does anybody know what the first product was, first application for a transistor was? It was Bell Labs, of course, that invented it. Take a guess. A relay for switching telephone circuits. Okay? It took a decade before the next application was developed. Okay, it seems ridiculous now, but oftentimes when you identify breakthroughs, there's not a lot of effort put into thinking about how this can change things. And so what we do in architecture is we look at this breakthrough. We not only look at the immediate applications, but we look at where this can take us. You'd think this is very difficult to do, but we actually find it's relatively straightforward. Good groups of people can get this 80% right, and that's excellent. The benefit of working on platform of ideas is in a brainstorming session, if that idea doesn't work out, you usually have to go back to the other ideas and start over. In platforms, if the first idea doesn't work out, that's okay because you can take everything you learned and apply it to the next problem. For instance, transistors may or may not be a great relay, but they make an excellent portable radio. Same technology. Second, people. So one of the things, I'm a physical chemist, I'm trained in vibrational energy transfer between gas phase molecules. And what I was taught is to become a world expert in the rate of vibrational energy transfer between these molecules. And I really know that stuff pretty well. What nobody ever told me in my whole career is that not only is that good, but it's also good to know a little bit about everything else. In other words, sometimes people give the saying, jack of all trades, master of none. It's really a bad thing. I like to modify that a little bit. Jack of all trades and master of some is extremely powerful. You can solve problems by analogy. If you come up with a new invention, you can figure out other places to apply it. And probably most importantly, you develop professional empathy. By being curious about lots of things, you can understand how what you do relates to what others do. And so you can make connections. And invention is all about connections. People have three aspects. It doesn't show up really well here, but we focus on mastery and depth. This is really important. It is really important to be good at something, to be a world-class expert at it. Curiosity and breadth is just as important. If you're curious, develop it. It's really a powerful tool. We also are trained to be excellent critical thinkers, but system thinking is just as important. Not only how good is this idea, but how does it fit in with the rest of the system? Finally, we're driven to become successful at doing something ourselves. Personal outcome and getting credit for it's considered very important. Equally important, we found in people, is the idea of affiliation. That you do something that helps the team. You don't necessarily get credit for it, but the team shines. And you derive a lot of joy from this. That creates an unbelievable team effort where you can achieve things like 1 + 1 = 3 in terms of outcomes. So we call this sometimes the T-shaped person. The legs mean the depth, the critical thinking, the personal outcome. The arms are the breadth, the systems thinking, and the organizational outcome. That combination turns out is magic for improving the probability of success and creating innovations. You can create a team of those T's, along with people that are specialists in their field. Your probability of success goes up dramatically. Third is organizing the ideas. This is something my colleague, actually, she was originally invited to this conference. I'm speaking for her. We work extensively with her. Kelly is a master of organizing technology into new businesses. And what she does is look at the new breakthroughs and the new platforms that are being developed and look at how we can stage those. What should the first application be? This may not be the most valuable application, but it's aligned with customers' interests and it's aligned with our manufacturing and our technical capability. So the business person staging this opportunity becomes extremely important. Also, that exercise of planning ahead is critical, because in the planning ahead, we can plan out what's going to happen if the first plan doesn't work. We can develop something called pivots in the startup world. We know what those pivots are ahead of time. So if we get some surprises, no worries. We can take what we learned and apply it in a completely new area. So those three aspects, I'll skip culture for a moment because it's a whole new talk, but these three aspects are three of the most important things you can do in creating skillful innovations. So this was developed pretty early in our efforts, and of course, being scientists, we want to test this out. And so we said, okay, so we're be $100 million a year, it has to be a breakthrough pretty much. To be a breakthrough, it needs to have a strong only statement. And so we did some brainstorming, we came up with a number of possibilities. We screened them for being breakthroughs, having strong only statements. One of them was fly-by-wire manufacturing. Bounced it off a lot of experts, they really liked it, but it's okay. Another one was neural computing. And so we had some ideas on how to make 3D computers, and we prototyped it, and that was pretty exciting too. The third one was, this is a plastic water bottle. It's made out of polyethylene terephthalate. This has a property called birefringence. It's, if you know what calcite is, you ever see double refraction. This water bottle has that property. It's as birefringent as calcite. Okay? For geologists and optics people, that's pretty remarkable. Everybody knows this, right, that knows anything about polymers, and it's in front of you literally every day. But nobody ever thought of making optical films out of this, making films that had optical properties, unique optical properties. And so we bounced this off experts, and most people didn't like the idea because it challenged assumptions. This is wonderful. What we found with breakthroughs is if you create an idea and everybody likes it right away, it's probably not a breakthrough. It should challenge assumptions. So we picked this idea. And we said, okay, let's turn this into a project. We roadmapped it, we put it in front of executives, and we slowly built support for it. This is what developed. So the first idea of using the plastic in water bottles for making interference optics, let's start going to the technical jargon here, that was published in a 5-page article in Science. It was clearly a nice, strong only statement. We then wanted to look at commercializing it and look at our first product. It was my size Barbie, not my size, but about a meter tall. Okay, and what our film did is it went into her dress, her halo, her cornice, and her shoes. And as part of this, again, I'm a physical chemist, I got to work with the suppliers for Barbie doll. And we were working with one company that made the glitter to make the sparkly shoes. And they took our film, they chopped it up, and I remember forever the owner holding up this vial of glitter. He said, "This is a breakthrough in glitter." I felt like my whole Ph.D. was validated at that point. It was a breakthrough, and credit to the team, we didn't stop there. We said, okay, let's take this breakthrough and continue it. This led to, if you ever see a clear credit card, this has the film in it. The film is there to block infrared light so it doesn't jam up your ATM machine. Goes into security films. Logos, light pipes, twice as reflective in a light pipe as silver-coated film. It goes into smartphone applications. It goes into architectural glazing to block infrared light without blocking any visible light. And it is in some well-known, very high-end automobiles to block infrared light to keep you cooler in the car, especially as they add more and more glass. That is one platform. This was planned out ahead of time. The technical people knew these products were possible. They became increasingly technically challenging, but they knew what the goal was. The other branch is another platform. This is something called a reflective polarizer. This went into TVs. It's now common, especially in high-performance 4K TVs. It's probably in your smartphone. We developed watch applications. We enabled a Pico projector. And then that's continuing on. My current group in VR and AR is using these films to, we think, create a breakthrough in making new formats for VR and AR. Planning out platforms can dramatically increase your probability of success because we had some projects that didn't succeed. It didn't matter. We were able to take what we learned from those projects and apply them to here. So if we think about the luck to skill continuum, what we believe we can do, and we've shown, is we can move our chances of success for even very complex breakthroughs, so we measure about 60%. Much higher probability of success. Second benefit is we found that we can dramatically accelerate these breakthroughs because we planned ahead where we can likely take these opportunities. We can make them happen much more quickly. So we've increased the probability of success of generating a breakthrough by 6-fold. We've also increased the speed of developing the breakthrough by about 6-fold. So I'd like to just leave with the idea, think of innovation as a skill that you can develop and refine throughout your whole career. This really matters. We need breakthroughs more than ever. One of the consequences of developing this product is we save a tremendous amount of energy in electronic displays. Equivalent is we've eliminated 2 large coal-powered power plants because of the efficiencies brought by these films. We need more of those breakthroughs in the world. So, thank you.